I want to take you back in time just slightly to 1941 into a place just close by where Lillian and Miles Kahn founded Manhattan Leather Bags, opening their very first store with a collection of 12 handbags. Now, the neat part about this is that these bags were made from the same high-quality leather used in, of all things, baseball gloves. And they were made with excellent craftsmanship. Now, this combination of fantastic leather and excellent craftsmanship was a success. Today, you know Manhattan Leather Bags as Coach, part of the $6 billion Tapestry Group. In this final discussion of the day, we're going to examine how this iconic 80-year-old brand embraces their past to forge their future by using new technology, sustainable manufacturing, and partnering with creative fashion leaders. Please welcome Sandeep Seth, the Global CMO and North America President of Coach, and he's joined by Sheena Butler-Young, the Senior Correspondent at the Business of Fashion. How about a warm round of applause for Sandeep and Sheena?
Good afternoon, everyone. We have a tall order because we're the only thing standing between them and probably a cocktail hour right now. So hopefully you're up to it.
We'll try and get this done really fast.
Well, I'm so excited to be here with you in conversation today about winning over this next generation and marketing to millennials and Gen Z. As Allan said, Coach is an 80-year-old brand, and you have the tall order of resonating with a group that wasn't around 8 decades ago when you were building the heritage that you now have, but it's also the group that is going to represent 70% of the premium market of which Coach is a part in the next 2.5 years. So I kind of want to start with this. You're evolving this brand. Does that start in the marketing department? I know you're the CMO, but does it start with marketing?
Firstly, thank you very much, and such an honor to be out here in front of this amazing group of people. I know Allan did a fantastic job of, talking the history of the brand and where it originated. Look, for brand positioning, it's not something that starts in one department or one place. I would say the starting point of everything that we are doing on our brand positioning, brand purpose, starts with our consumers on that. And the intensive amount of work that the team has done to understand the consumers and how they are evolving. Back in 1941, when Coach started, there was a premise of what consumers were looking for, and it was about getting the highest quality functional bag to what today consumers look for when they talk about bags or when they talk about fashion. It's self-expression. So it starts with the consumers, but then again, I would say in a very classical marketing way, it's really all about the 4 Ps, or in fact, I would say 5 Ps. It starts with people. First, how do you bring your organization to that? Through that, but then also, how does this positioning reflect across product, price, place, and promotion? And that means all functions from marketing to finance to product design, merchants. All of us need to come together to make this happen. So again, marketing could be the one kind of orchestrating it, but it's really a co-creation and collaboration with all the functions.
Absolutely, it sounds very holistic. I want to talk about the actual brand position that you came out with. It's expressive luxury. It's taking forward the initial message of accessible luxury. Why did that make sense for Coach to resonate with this group, Millennials and Gen Z? What was the idea behind that?
Look, the brand positioning is, again, a reflection of the consumer needs, right? Back in 2000, when kind of Coach defined accessible luxury, the need of the hour that time from the consumer's point of view was, how can I have a luxury experience and high quality of luxury, but at a price I can afford? So that's where accessible luxury made all the sense. And what Coach did back then was break that compromise that that luxury experience only comes at a cost, and made luxury much more accessible, much more inclusive. But if you talk to today's generation, especially Gen Zs and young millennials, what they're looking from a luxury brand is beyond what has been defined traditionally. It's a lot more about self-expression on that. So again, for us, the whole brand positioning of expressive luxury takes a disruptive view of what fashion needs to be. It moves from an older view of it's about brand expression to it's about self-expression.
How do you do that? How do you generate self-expression by way of marketing a brand? What does that look like? I was thinking about recent campaigns, like I've seen Little Nas X. Like, why does that make sense as a brand ambassador? What part of that message is someone like Little Nas X bringing forward?
Absolutely. Look, a lot of, luxury advertising or, fashion advertising is very product centric, right? What you put at the center of everything is the product or the brand. But when you become much more purpose-led, which is where Coach is going, actually you put your consumer at the center of it. You put the human versus the brand. So if you look at our, purpose launch that we did last year in September with Lil Nas X, we actually didn't even feature any product in that campaign. It was really all about the values that the brand stands for, and especially bringing that inspiration that Lil Nas himself stands for of, reinventing himself and expressing himself in the way. So again, this is a big shift, which is where, you're moving the brand as more a platform of expression versus the brand in itself being an expression. So it's fun. It puts the consumer at the center. But it's also challenging when, you're always kind of starting with the product. So it completely shifts the paradigm of what marketing means.
Absolutely. You mean it's not easy to just talk to Gen Z? They don't just understand very quickly what you have to say. On that note, it's, we've heard this I'm sure a lot of you have. Gen Z is pragmatic, they're politically progressive, they love the climate, and we hear millennials, they like avocado toast. They're also, flexible, entrepreneurial, the whole thing. But you also have to do a lot of research about these two cohorts. What are some of the unique and innovative ways that you learn about these groups? And then how do you apply them? Is there something interesting you've learned? I'll add that. Is there something interesting you've learned that's not on that list, like beyond avocado toast and saving the planet?
Look, we're putting a lot of effort on understanding this consumer and just on a very practical basis. The only way to do that is spend time with the Gen Zs, right?
How do you do that? You told me an interesting story offline of like that your team or Coach as a brand has spent time that you would sit down and go to the house of Gen Z people and like actually spend the day or the night and really get in there.
Yeah, so we're spending a lot of time in their homes, and when I'm saying a lot of times, you go to the in-homes and you spend 2-3 hours there, really talking to them, understanding their life, walking through their wardrobes, really understanding how they make decisions, where it fits, but more importantly, understanding the emotions behind that. We then go out shopping with them. So we go around, to different malls. They pick where they want to go and see how they're shopping, how they browse, how they make their decisions, sit down again, maybe have a lunch or a drink with them and really try and understand where fashion fits in their life and what role it plays. And of the many things that we figured out, Gen Z is on one hand very definitive about their point of view on everything. You mentioned many things from sustainability to inclusivity. They have a very, very strong point of view and they do want to express themselves. But it's also very obvious that they reach a point where they need something that gives them confidence. Right. Very often in each of these conversations we've had with Gen Zs, they talk about, I know what I want, but I also want to be accepted in the environment I'm going in. And a lot of things here play a role. How I look, what I wear, while I want to express myself, I also don't want to alienate myself from the environment I'm in on that. And I think in that sense, a lot of categories, fashion being one, but beauty being another one, play a very, very important role on giving them that confidence and being part of their journey as they come out in the world and start really expressing their point of views and their views.
I love that. It sounds like this saying I once heard of, Gen Z wants to be different just like their friends. It's like this hodgepodge of wanting to be an individual, but also needing to still, as most young people do, want that approval of your peers. I want to talk about how do you measure success. As you start this evolution, as you launch a new brand positioning, you obviously continually have to look at this, but you're starting to see, is this resonating? Is this working? How do you measure that? And how much have you changed your scorecard? What does it look like? You mentioned that you had a scorecard that has had to change as you work through this.
Sure. Look, the biggest thing here is, we're all tied to delivering the quarter while building a brand for the long term, right? So how do you balance between the two? A lot of the measurements, I would say, always starts with the revenue, right? What's the revenue we're generating? But that in itself does not show you whether you're building a brand over long term. So we are evolving our measurements, I would say, and within that, we're trying to put in the right brand measures that will help us see, are we creating brand love? Right? Are we connecting with the younger generation? And to me, it's really important to have some very clear behavioral measures within that beyond just anything else. Engagement becomes a very important behavioral measure over impressions and views, right? I mean, a lot of times people would measure how much impression I got or how much earned value I got. That does not show a behavior change, right? Versus engagement will show you a behavior change.
What do you mean by engagement? So what is that specifically?
When they click on something that you put out there, whether they like, they comment, they share, or they click and browse through your site, this is when someone has put an effort to engage with the brand beyond just passively watch something that's put out there, right? So it's important for behavioral measures to be at the top of what we are looking at, because you only put effort if there's something that's moved you. Otherwise, you're not going to put that effort on that. Search uplift is a behavioral measure, which means I saw something from your brand and I'm going to go look for it, because that's when you're putting in your personal time to go and search for the brand or the product on that. So we're trying to kind of build a whole measurement where we put the behavioral measures up there and then look at certain brand uplift measures like brand consideration, right? How's that?
And what brand consideration? What is that one? The journalist to me needs everything defined to make sure I understand exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's like, will I consider this brand for my next purchase, right, on that? So this is unaided measure that you will get, like which brands are you considering, right? And this is where only brands that fall top of their mind in the evoke set will kind of come in that. And, as we've started this journey of putting the new, brand positioning out there with our, purpose of Courage to be Real, we've seen a significant improvement for Coach on the brand consideration across all age groups, but more importantly amongst the younger age groups of Gen Zs and young millennials on that.
Change the scorecard, you change the game. You have to know what you're measuring. So that's an important point to think about all the things on the lead up to the actual revenue. I want to talk about inclusivity. We talked about this earlier, that Gen Z and millennials, they both value inclusion. How do you think about what inclusivity means today to this group compared to how Coach saw it in 1941? Because Coach was sort of doing this well before it was in vogue for brands to sort of boost their diversity bona fides by saying, hey, look at us, here's how we're being inclusive. It started with the idea of taking a baseball glove and turning that into a leather good, and then bringing people on that you can have luxury at any price point, to Bonnie Cashin as a designer, a woman designer of menswear decades ago, and then Lil Nas X today. That's a big jump to inclusivity. How do you think about inclusivity today versus how the brand saw it in 1941?
I think you've pretty much captured the whole essence of that inclusivity. But you're right. Look, inclusivity has been a core value for Coach ever since inception, right? I mean, going back to the Miles Khan story, 1941, an immigrant in New York wanting to be part of this community, getting involved into baseball as in a big way and being inspired from the baseball club, right? So it's a story of this person coming into New York and being included in the community, and then and doing something there, to the point you made about Bonnie Cashin, or if I look at the year 2000 of accessible luxury, which was really to make luxury inclusive. What inclusivity means today is much more evolved than where it has been over the years, right? We've talked about, as we talk to Gen Zs and they talk about self-expression and inclusivity, it's interesting how everyone talks about my multiple selves, right? Which is very different. Look, we all wanted to self-express. I'll give up my age now. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, of course, we all wanted to express ourselves, right?
You did? Gen Z doesn't think, they think the world started this week.
But self-expression then was very different. You're right, self-expression was very, very different. It was a singular aspect of what you are, right? I mean, what's my true self and how I bring that to life. But for Gen Zs, it's many selves, right, on that. And each of them are very authentic to who I am. And how I want to express myself in each of those moments presents a very different opportunity, including my virtual self. My avatar is also my authentic self-expression in that sense, right? And why is this happening? Because look, on one hand, technology and everything that's happening around us is a big enabler on how progress is happening, but it's also added more complexity in the lives of Gen Zs versus any one of us who grew up before this technology existed, right? On that, how I present myself on social media, how I present myself in the real world, how I present myself in school. Each of them is creating a whole different level of stress, if I were to use that term. And we're talking about a lot of mental health challenges out here that we constantly kind of face on that. So Gen Zs are looking at that self-expression, that inclusivity in such a holistic way. And that poses both challenge and opportunity for the brands on how do I provide that platform for this cohort.
Absolutely. I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier. Heritage is an amazing thing. It can stand for so many things, but there's also challenges to that, right? There's challenges to having such a rich history and knowing what part of those you can amplify and what things you might need to kind of put on the back burner. How do you as a leader bring people along on this journey? I joke about Gen Z, but there are things like Web3 and the metaverse, and I care about how my avatar looks online that, someone that might have been working at a brand 20 years ago, that doesn't resonate with them. How do you as a leader start to bring people along and cultivate buy-in as you take this journey?
Absolutely. Look, the most important thing is everyone in the organization needs to buy into this brand purpose, right? And they need to kind of totally live that purpose. And so I always believe when you're defining brand's purpose, it starts with its people, its employees and everyone who works there, because that's the why, that's the reason why you wake up and go to work every day on that, right? And a lot of what we are doing, as much as communicating our brand story externally, is build that internally for each and every employee and kind of give a reason to why am I working out here and what is that value that I bring to community at large versus I just come and I'm in the marketing department or I'm in the finance department. There's a role we all play on that, right? So a lot of what we are doing is starting to build that conviction. But at the same time, you talked about technology. Look, technology is moving faster than ever before. I mean, the speed of computing is moving at an exponential pace on that. And one of the things we talk about at Tapestry and across all the three brands is moving with the speed of consumers or speed of culture, right, on that. So that's very, very important for us on how are we experimenting. The most important thing is don't think of technology as just a shiny object. If it's adding friction, don't tap into it. Yeah. But if it is really helping solve the problem, whether it's a physical experience in the store or whether it's helping in bringing that story to life, in a meaningful way, then we tap into it. So there's a lot of nimbleness that we have to build in the organization to test and learn, and more importantly, be comfortable with failing quite often.
Yeah, I love that. Communication, nimbleness, no technology for the sake of technology. Would you add anything in terms of the most challenging part of resonating with Gen Z and millennials? What's the toughest part of your job right now in this climate where things are moving fast, where inclusivity is important, so is sustainability, but maybe if it costs too much, maybe I don't care about sustainability this week. What's the biggest challenge in sort of getting the best of all of that?
I would say it's both the biggest challenge, but at the same time, what excites me is the biggest opportunity is letting go of control, right? We have to give the control to the consumer to define where this brand goes. Now that's very difficult for brand, marketing, design, because we are used to controlling the narrative, right? Yeah. But you cannot control the narrative in today's world. Your narrative is defined by how people define you in social media or across different touch points, right?
God help us.
Right.
I hope my narrative
right. So I think that's the most important part. How do you co-create that future for the brand?
Yeah.
And we're doing that in many ways. We've recently launched Coachtopia as our new sustainable line, which is really co-created with the group of Gen Zs who are working as a part of the beta group with the team, co-creating every aspect of the product design to the advertising that went in, and everyone that's featured in that is one of the Gen Zs that
How did you find them? What was the process like of finding these Gen Zs that could do what you just described?
I think the team put in a lot of effort in terms of really identifying people, the Gen Zs who are very much into sustainability and fashion, right? And creating this expert panel first. It started as a small panel and it's grown up into a pretty big community that we are working on. And it's something that we're taking as an inspiration on the total brand, saying how do we co-create the future of this brand, while of course we want to maintain the overall design aesthetics of what Coach stands for and what Coach brings in from its quality and its values point of view, but how do we make sure that this is a brand that is created for this generation and the future generations to come.
Absolutely. So you have to actually listen to the people that you want to sell to.
For a change, we have to listen versus talk, yes.
You have to listen versus talk. I think that's the perfect note to end on. Listen versus talk. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Having this conversation.
Pleasure.
Thank you all.
Thank you.